The initiator was the attack on our Uri garrison, which took place on 18 September. And to me personally, that was a horrible day because from morning I started getting reports about casualties that have happened. Five people dead from our side. After 4 terrorists had sneaked into the garrison, then it was 10, then 15, and finally we lost 19 soldiers that day. It was the biggest single day loss in Kashmir in counter-terrorist operations. The action by the terrorists requires a very strong response from our side. And that response also cannot be defensive. We cannot just look at strengthening our own garrisons, which is essential and which was done later. But I mean, the primary response cannot be merely defensive. And therefore, we needed to go across the border and strike into territory where these terrorist camps were located. And while Mohan, a lot of attention is paid to that the Indian army went and struck terrorist camps, the message was mainly directed at Pakistan army. That look, we will come across territory that you defend, and we will come across and hit terrorist targets that you are supporting.
Thank you, General Hooda, for very kindly accepting the invitation and make a special appearance in our episode on security in the documentary. So let's proceed without further ado. You started your career, sir, in 1976, and after 40 years of distinguished service, you retired in 2016, which is essentially, I think, at least 40 years of post-independence period. Which, so it's a very wide canvas, and I would like to start our conversation in terms of identifying the key differences in the security environment and the defense readiness of the country between 1976 at the one end of the pole and 2016 at the other end of the pole.
Yeah, so one, firstly, thank you very much for inviting me. A great pleasure to be here with you. So actually, I joined the National Defense Academy in 1973. So it was actually 44 years in uniform. 3 years NDA, 1 year IMA, and then 40 years in the military. I joined, it was just, the aftermath of the 1971 success that we had. The biggest success, in fact, that we'd had in military terms. And, there was this huge euphoria around in the country. We have come a long way, Mohan, from there. Many challenges that we came across. The insurgencies that broke out in Jammu and Kashmir, in Punjab, our involvement in IPKF in Sri Lanka, and then, of course, the scourge of terrorism that we saw, particularly late 80s onwards, that hit India. Of course, the biggest was the Mumbai attack of 2008. And I think from all these multiple crises, we've learned a lot. We've developed as an army. After the Kargil War in 1999, I think we had the biggest reform in our national security architecture, not only in the military. And that was the most comprehensive assessment of national security that was undertaken. And today, if you ask me, you're a much more sort of confident nation, a much more capable military. We've absorbed technology, we've absorbed new equipment, we've changed our strategy and doctrine. But Mohan, one thing that hasn't changed really is the spirit and the ethos of the Indian soldier. What we saw and what I saw when I joined the army and the spirit that you see among the soldiers, the motivation levels of the officers and the men, I think that one thing remains constant, and we are grateful as a nation for that.
Okay. So essentially, your career started and ended with two very defining moments in India's military history, so to say. Just after the 71 war victory, and then after also the 2016 surgical strike, which essentially redefined India's strategic and tactical response to this constant attacks in small sizes by Pakistan. I think keeping those differences in mind, let us start looking at the change in the war tactics. In those two defining periods. If you look at the modern warfare now, particularly when you look at Ukraine, you see the use of conventional warfare by use of the tanks and so on, and also the drones flying overhead, cheap, drones flying overhead. And then a few days ago, we saw the Iron Dome in Israel deflecting the missile and drone attacks from Iran. So, even from a common man's perspective, the warfare tactics have changed tremendously. How do you see that change?
So, one, I think the biggest sort of impact on what we call the character of warfare has been technology. I mean, today we are seeing much more sort of precise and precision in firing. We are seeing long-range, vectors and weapons being used. I mean, Iran and Israel are targeting each other from 1,000 miles away. You are seeing Ukrainian drones hitting Moscow. So what we used to say that, the front lines are largely where two militaries face each other. Today, that is no longer the case. I mean, there is a war from afar. So even civilian populations, which are not in the sort of direct contact, are also in danger. We are seeing new challenges in the space of cyber, information warfare. Today, we say control is not only over territories, but we also need to have control over public opinion. And that's how information warfare has transformed, the very character of war. We are also seeing some precision, high technology weapon systems in the hands of non-state actors. So the Houthis have been striking, the Aramco oil facilities in Saudi Arabia, and so are thinking about how do you deter adversaries has also undergone a change, and we need to start rethinking. Deterrence against state actors is one aspect. How do you deter non-state actors? So a lot of changes not only in tactics on the battlefield, but also in our fundamental thinking about warfare are undergoing a change. At the same time, some things have remained constant, Mohan, and those things are that human resources are still key in war fighting. I think a British general very famously said, look, you can't cyber your way across a river. And how is success being measured? Success is still being measured in territorial terms about land captured. So Ukraine says, oh, we've driven, the Russians out of so-and-so territory. Russia says we are going to capture and we've captured so much territory. So in some ways, people who think non-kinetic warfare will play a key or cyber warfare will win wars for you. Some things have remained kind of constant.
Okay. Now, if we kind of dissect the war histories in the past 50 years or so, after the Second World War, if you look at the subsequent wars, whether it is Korean War, the Vietnam War, Afghanistan War, Iraq, and so on, what you see is that a country which has an overwhelming, military superiority basically gets humbled by hardly armed soldiers or militias, um, whose motivation alone is sufficient to overcome any technological deficiency they have had. So, I take your point that at the end of the day, it's the soldier that counts. So, if that being the case, what is the rationale in countries investing millions and millions of dollars in sophisticated technology?
So one sophisticated technology is required at the end of the day. I mean, particularly when state-on-state conflicts, and we are seeing that the Russia-Ukraine war, that technology does play a role. We saw that in the first Gulf War, for example, where the Americans use high technology. So I will not discount the use of technology and its requirement for building up military capability. For example, if there is to be some kind of conflict between India and China, technology is going to play a key role there. At the same time, I think you made that point: resilience and determination of a foe who refuses to accept that he has been defeated. After all, the Americans, I think, within maybe 2 or 3 weeks of start of the Afghan campaign, had entered Kabul, and they said, the Taliban is completely defeated. But the fact is, they fought a war for 20 years and finally had to have what is called an ignominious withdrawal from that country. I think there are some other issues that we need to consider. Did America, for example, have the correct political objective? After all, every military action has to have a clear political aim and political objective. What was America's clear political objective in Afghanistan? Was it counterterrorism? Was it nation building? Was it promoting democracy? And I think sometimes when that confusion is there, then the way you apply your resources and assets also becomes a bit of a problem. And there is criticism uh, of the US, both in Afghanistan and Vietnam. Was there clarity of objectives in Vietnam? Were the metrics for success clearly defined? So these are also aspects, I think, which go into ultimately whether wars are going to succeed or they're going to fail.
Mhm. That takes me seamlessly to my next question, which is the critical need for cooperation between the political class and the military class in terms of synergizing and strategizing together. So, in your own experience of 40 years, how have you seen the synergy between the two resulting in very great successes or otherwise?
So during critical times, Mohan, we have seen great clarity on the political side to uh, the directions that they give. I mean, look at the 71 war, for example. Kargil, I know there is some criticism about instructions given not to cross the line of control to the Indian forces. But that was a clear decision taken by the political leadership. Now you could criticize it or not, but there was clarity in what they wanted and how the military should behave. Uh, there was great clarity when I was tasked for the 2016 surgical strike, that clear directions, not in exactly how you should do it, but what we want from this and what is it that we aim to sort of achieve by this. So I think in times of crisis, there is great clarity. If there is a criticism, it is that there is not enough political military discussion and debate uh, in normal times on how we need to look at the overall direction of our national security. How is it that capability development must happen within the military? That I think is something that's lacking. That you don't have a regular dialogue between the political and military leadership. I know some authors like Anit Mukherjee have called the civil military relations in India as the absent dialogue. We don't have enough conversation. But certainly in times of crisis and times of problems. I think exactly in what we need to do.
Okay. Now, one area where that cooperation is absolutely essential is in terms of defense procurement, and India is the biggest importer of arms and ammunition, and people in India are very familiar with the Bofors controversy, and how during Kargil war our soldiers were did not have adequate protective equipment and so on. So there is a lot of history behind the arms procurement as far as India is concerned. Now this is where politics, economics, and military kind of clash together, right? I mean, you might want the most sophisticated arms, but there is a hefty price tag to it. Or should I procure it from Russia or from US or from France or whatever it is? So from the point of view of defense purchase, the government's decision to become the Make in India or Atmanirbharta policy, how do you think that has really helped um, defense procurement?
Look, Mohan, we needed to indigenize. I mean, the kind of equipment we were purchasing, the dependency on specific countries like Russia, for example, I mean, dependent 60% on Russia for defense equipment. That really was not good for the country. And secondly, one, the fact is no country is going to part with cutting edge military technology to you. It's something that you have to develop yourself. So I think it's good one that we started a few years ago to diversify our weapon imports. And now the government, I think, is very, very serious about this Atmanirbhar, self-reliance in defense industry. I know some people could point out to the fact that we are still the largest defense importers in the world. The latest SIPRI report, which has looked at the last 5 years, says India is the number one defense importer. But that's not because the government hasn't made an effort, but because we are starting, with an defense industrial base that is not really mature. The R&D is not there. But slowly, I think you will find that the efforts will bear fruit, and I'm hopeful in the next decade we will see significant improvement in our ability to produce indigenous weapon systems.
Okay. So let's shift from warfare strategy and warfare technology to war theaters, and let's start with from inside the northeastern states. And you worked in Nagaland at the height of the Naga insurgency, and the recent reports suggest that in the Lok Sabha election in the Nagaland constituency, hardly any votes were cast. Do you think the specter of insurgency has reared its ugly head again in Nagaland?
So, Mohan, not really. So, let me put this in perspective. And Nagaland has been our longest-running insurgency in India. But after we've had ceasefire with most of the Naga insurgent groups, as far as violence is concerned, you'll find there is hardly any violence. There was great hope after the 2015 Naga Peace Accord was signed between the government and the NSCIM, which is the largest insurgent group there, that we could come to some kind of political resolution. Unfortunately, for many reasons, that has not happened. The 2015 Accord is yet to be implemented. But if you look at Nagaland today, the problem is not so much insurgency or violence. It's more corruption, extortion, and people yearning for development. So the reason why we didn't see any voting in the eastern Nagaland districts is because eastern Nagaland districts feel, look, we have been kept out of the economic picture, development hasn't happened. So that is, I think, what people are looking for in Nagaland. It's also not only Nagaland. So if you look at, because there are different ethnic groups in the Northeast, so these groups sometimes feel disempowered, and the government has establish these autonomous councils. So, like Bodoland, for example, has an autonomous council. In the North Kachar Hills, there is an autonomous council, and these are only meant to politically empower people and give them that feeling that you have some control over uh, the economics and how the money is spent, etc. So I think that's where the major problem lies, where some of the minor ethnic groups feel that there is discrimination and lack of development in our areas. And if that can be sort of taken up, I think at least in Nagaland, the problem should be resolved.
Okay. Now, as a Major General, you also were responsible for counterinsurgency operations in Manipur, and the fires have been burning in Manipur for quite some time now. What do you believe is the final solution, or sustainable solution, so to say, to the current crisis in Manipur?
So, Mohan, frankly, when I look at the situation in Manipur, I'm completely shocked as an Indian citizen. Uh, I mean, the state law and order machine is completely broken down, and I think that's the first step towards trying to, at least in the short term, solve the problem in Manipur. Uh, the authority of the state has to be re-established. You can't have vigilante armed groups roaming around the state, whether it is the Meiteis or it is the Cookies, establishing their own sort of law over the land, doing whatever they feel like doing. And it is not as if there is insufficient military, army, Assam rifles, police forces. So, as I said, I'm completely shocked. The first thing that you need to do, you cannot allow vigilante groups to sort of run amok. So, first thing is these people must be sort of disarmed, arrested, whatever is to be done. I know in the short term it could create some levels of violence, but it's something that just completely needs to be done. And after that, I think what you have to address is the fears of different ethnic groups. So, and everybody has a justification. So the Meiteis feel that they are being squeezed in the Nepal Valley. They don't have, reservation for jobs, etc. Uh, the people in the hills, the Nagas and the Cookies, can buy land in the Impal Valley, which is just 10% of the population, where majority of the Meiteis reside. But the Meiteis cannot buy any land in the hills, so they feel they're getting more and more squeezed by people buying land in the valley. So they have some, justification that needs to be addressed. The Cookies sort of feel that we have already been marginalized as a scheduled tribe, and now if reservation is extended to the Meiteis, this is going to further disempower us. So these are frankly fears of what is going to come in the future, Mohan. And the government needs to sort of sit down with these groups, talk to them, and ensure that some of their genuine sort of grievances and problems are addressed. I'm not saying this is going to be a short-term quick fix, so it will take time. But at least get the armed vigilante groups off the streets and start talking to the stakeholders, which are the societies which are there.
Okay. Mhm. Now, from 2012 to 2016, you were stationed in Jammu and Kashmir, first as a Corps commander and then as the Army commander of the Northern Command. In this assignment, you handled numerous strategic challenges along the borders, both with Pakistan and China, which, both are again also the flashpoints now. So let's take a look at them. And let's start with China, which is the biggest security challenge to the Indian government at the moment. Now, you were the army commander during the Chumar incident along the LAC in 2014. What were the key lessons learned from that encounter? Because I think that was the kind of genesis of the recent problems.
So let me just briefly describe on what happened. So it was in September that suddenly we saw about 500 Chinese soldiers, along with, they came with some earth moving and road construction equipment and tried to build a road on our side of the line of actual control. And the minute we saw this, the local post commander there immediately reacted. We stopped the dozers from coming inside, and we quickly built up our forces. And then there were thousands of soldiers facing off each other at a distance of maybe 1 or 2 yards, and the situation carried on, over the next 2 weeks. What lesson we learned? One is that you need to stand firm against the Chinese. This was the time, and I think it's important also to put this in context. This was the time when we had these very massive floods in the Kashmir Valley. So the road coming from Srinagar to Ladakh, Leh, was completely cut off. And this is the main sort of road for movement into Leh and Ladakh. So Leh was completely sort of cut off from Srinagar side. And Xi Jinping was to visit India in the next 2 days. So maybe, I can't say, but my own sense is, the PLA thought this is an opportune time, that they can't bring in too many reinforcements, and the fact that there's a high-level political meeting which is due, perhaps the Indian army will not respond very strongly and, accept this. So one lesson is, you need to stand completely firm with whatever they do. And I saw that, so I was there as an army commander for 2.5 years, Mohan, and I saw that in our normal dealings also, when Chinese patrols attempted to come inside, you needed to deal with them firmly. I'm making a distinction between firmness and aggressiveness. We clearly told them this is not acceptable to us. The situation has somewhat changed today. There's greater aggressiveness on both sides. But I think if you stand firm against the Chinese, they understand that, there will be a pushback, and so let's limit our activities.
Now, the description of this incident kind of takes me back to the kind of discussion that I've had with some experts in the matter, an Australian academic and the US academic who specialize in China. And they keep stressing about the absolute need to understand the Chinese mindset towards the world in general and towards India in particular. In their assessment, China has always looked down upon India because they believe that there cannot be two tigers on the mountain or cannot be two suns in the sky, and India should always be subservient to China. That's always been their mindset, and hearing the description of the event in Chumar that you just gave, it kind of highlights the need for that, because on the one hand, when there is a highest level political meeting going on, at the same time, something else will be going on at the border. So how do you dissect the Chinese mindset in that background?
No, so what you said is completely right. The Chinese have a feeling that there is a superiority complex. Let me put it that way. Economy is bigger, the military budget size is bigger. If you look at many commentaries in global times, that's the mouthpiece of the government, and you will find comments like the Indian military is no match to the Chinese military. If Indian army tries to do something, there'll be a repeat of the 1962 war. So that kind of conversation keeps happening. But I think at the ground level, where we have interacted with the PLA, there is a better understanding of the capabilities of the Indian military. The Indian army soldier is battle hardened. He has done numerous tenures in these areas. Our system, is that units rotate in and out of field areas, field to peace. So at a time, a unit would be fighting insurgency in Jammu and Kashmir. Another time, it's on the line of control in Pakistan, another time it's on bilateral control the PLA doesn't have that system. So there people permanently stay in their peace station, and only the border defense regiments are guarding the border. So well trained, battle hardened soldiers, very motivated people on our side. And I don't want to say that the PLA is not professional, and I think we should uh, be clear also about and understand your enemy. But the fact is that Xi Jinping himself has made comments like the PLA has a peace disease, that they are not really very battle hardened, or that the training has not been very realistic. I think they are. I think they are getting better, but the sense that somehow the Chinese soldier is superior to the Indian soldier or the army is superior to the army. I think something maybe only more for rhetoric. The military, I think, understands this better.
Okay. That was my next question, actually, because we just had a discussion about man versus machine, and we concluded that at the end of the day, it's the human resolve that supersedes technical superiority or whatever. So, if we were to assess the Chinese forces against the Indian forces, now, yes, economically, technologically, Chinese are way ahead of us. There is no doubt about that, and we should not underestimate it in any way, shape, or form. That given, if you look at the battle readiness of the Chinese forces in the last 40 years, they haven't really had any direct combat experience, whereas the Indian army, deals with it on a kind of regular basis. So, if we were to look at it from that perspective, and I've also heard that with the one-child policy, the resolve of the Chinese soldier, is really down, and we wouldn't know. So, if the situation were to deteriorate at the border, how would you assess the battle between the man and machine at the LAC?
You're right that the Chinese military, in terms of its equipment, in terms of technology, is better than what India has. They even have sort of better infrastructure uh, on their side. But the fact, Mohan, is you're fighting at altitudes, which are 15, 16, 17,000 feet. You're fighting on the Himalayan watershed, which is the highest mountain range in the world. So, there's on what machines and technology can do, and a lot will depend on, what sort of soldiers there are. And then you mentioned something. As I said, I don't want to say that the soldiers are not professional, but there are issues. So there is conscription system. So there are conscripts. You talked about a one-child policy. Uh, Also, and this is from some research that has been done, that the PLA is not really getting the best of the people because you know uh, because population is shrinking. People are looking for better opportunities rather than going into the PLA. And our soldiers, as I mentioned before, are battle hardened, have experienced the kind of conditions that exist. Some of the senior lot, which would be there in units, would perhaps have seen these conditions maybe 2 or 3 times. I mean, I myself, in the first 20 years of my service, I had served on the UP-Tibet border uh, against China. I had served in Sikkim. I had served in Nagaland. So, you know, the conditions under which we operate make you actually much better equipped to handle these situations.
You talked about infrastructure development rightly, and I was in Ladakh 2 years ago, of course, as a tourist, and the infrastructure development is really going on full speed. So, do you think, in that context, we should take a leaf out of the Chinese book and hide our strength and bide our time, and rapidly build the infrastructure along the border?
That's what we're doing, Mohan, right now. There's a big push towards infrastructure development, and caught real pace, after 2020. Uh, we should also, I think, also be mindful. We should not compare infrastructure on our side with infrastructure on the Chinese side. See, the Tibetan plateau is completely flat, so building roads, railway lines is much easier. What we need to focus is on what is our own operational requirement and what is the kind of infrastructure that is required to support our operations. And that is what is going on in a big way. And while currently there may be a few shortfalls, I think in the next 3 or 4 years, you will find very good infrastructure, roads, tunnels, uh, habitat for troops, etc. All coming up in a big way.
Okay. Now let's come to another war theater, which is Pakistan. And as again, you have been there. You have led the Indian Army to tremendous success, particularly as an army commander. You led the surgical strike against Pakistan in September 2016. Um, I am just all excited to hear about it from you as to what was it like? What were the key lessons learned?
So Mohan, let me say the start was not good because uh, the initiator was the attack on our Uri garrison, which took place on 18 September. And to me personally, that was a horrible day because from morning I started getting reports about casualties that have happened. Five people dead from our side. After four terrorists had sneaked into the garrison, then it was 10, then 15, and finally we lost 19 soldiers that day. It was the biggest single day loss in Kashmir in counter-terrorist operations till then. And so that it wasn't a sort of very good feeling of, we were all asking ourselves, why did it happen? Could we have prevented it? What could we have done better? But I think very quickly after that, we said, we will do the post-mortem later and see what went wrong and how to repair it. But this action by the terrorists requires a very strong response from our side. And that response also cannot be defensive. We cannot just look at strengthening our own garrisons, which is essential and which was done later. But I mean, the primary response cannot be merely defensive, and therefore we needed to go across the border and strike into territory where these terrorist camps were located. And while a lot of attention is paid to that, the Indian army went and struck terrorist camps, the message was mainly directed at Pakistan army. That look, we will come across territory that you defend, and we will come across and hit terrorist targets that you are supporting. So the idea was not, and a lot of people ask me how many terrorists were killed, 50, 60, 70. It really didn't matter. The idea was to send a strong message to Pakistan that if you continue to do this, then we will escalate and carry out cross-border operations. So we hit 10 days later, we went across and hit multiple targets across in Pakistan territory, spread across almost 250 kilometers. I know a lot of people look at the Uri movie and say how true it is, and I tell them the operation the operation we did was much larger than than the Uri movie because there was only one target hit. We actually hit 5 targets on the same night, and that it was successful. And I think what it did also was gave us that confidence as a military, as the army, that look, you can conduct these complex operations and you can send a strong message to Pakistan by doing this. And I think wants to terrorist attacks that we will not accept this easily now, and that we will respond strongly. And I think that's what the government policy has been, and it was reinforced by the surgical strike and subsequently by the airstrike following the Balakot incident.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think the message went very loud and clear. The fact that today we have a kind of peace at the border, at least with Pakistan, in terms of the agreement that we have had with them, kind of shows that. And of course, the economic situation of Pakistan also has kind of helped them open the eyes of the army. Dr. Pervez Hoodboy, who is a commentator from that side, also recognizes the fact that the army is slowly waking up to the fact that the obsession with Kashmir is simply stupid, as he put it. Okay, so far we have discussed India and China, and then India and Pakistan, but there is a third dimension: India, Pakistan, China, right? So, is it fair to describe Pakistan as a snake in the backyard dancing to the tune of China?
The word I won't use exactly the same word, but the fact is that today Pakistan is highly dependent on China for its economic survival. Almost all its military equipment is now coming from China. It's completely dependent on military technology on China, and so you would expect that they would, to a very large extent, be guided by what the Chinese tell them. Having said that, I think there is also today a practical realization that India has become much more powerful, and so trying to take advantage will have tremendous cost. So while they could try and exploit the situation in case a conflict, for example, happens between India uh, and China, I don't think just at the behest of the Chinese, they are going to be willing to put their own survival at stake. They know that India will react very strongly. So we saw that when we had this ongoing standoff that was happening between India and China at the LAC in eastern Ladakh, the Pakistanis were completely quiet. They entered into a ceasefire with India, in fact. So I think there would be limits to what they would be willing to risk against an India, which is, in terms of conventional weaponry and in terms of conventional equipment, is much superior to what Pakistan is.
Okay. Now let's look at another triangular kind of dimension, which is Pakistan, Afghanistan, and India. When I was interviewing one of the American analysts, he made an interesting point that, look, who would have expected that in Taliban we would come to a situation where India would be on the front foot and Pakistan on the back foot, with Taliban, profusely praising India's help and wanting to partner with India, whereas it's fighting with Pakistan. So how do you think this has come about? Is it political magic that the present government has come out with, or it's a painstaking work in terms of dealing with your adversaries and turning adversity into an opportunity?
Well, I think two reasons. One is India has had a sort of consistent stance in Afghanistan, which is largely people centric. That look, we have years of history amongst us. We have years of people to people contacts. Sikhs in Afghanistan. The number of Afghan students who were coming to India. The fact that we were extensively involved with the training of Afghanistan army personnel. The fact that we had spent a lot of money even prior to Taliban takeover in Afghanistan in development projects. And even after Taliban took over, India did not say, "Look, there's a change in regime, and we are not going to interact with you." India and India has taken a principled position that we need an inclusive government. Human rights must be improved, particularly rights of women and children. At the same time, we are willing to help the common Afghan people. And so 50,000 tons of rice, 280 tons of medical supplies, the assistance that was given during COVID. So I think these are things that have helped, build a relationship, call it a cautious relationship, but a relationship between India and the Taliban. On the other hand, I think what's happened is Pakistan has been showing a sort of largely arrogant and big brotherly attitude toward the Taliban. And you heard Imran Khan's statements. He was very happy after the Americans pulled out. They thought this is our own backyard now, and they will listen to everything that we do. And that has really come to haunt them now, because we are seeing not only terrorist attacks uh, from Afghanistan into Pakistan, but you're also seeing conflict between state forces. So Pakistan army and the Taliban state forces are attacking each other, airstrikes, artillery strikes across the border. So the situation and the relations between Afghanistan and Pakistan have really, really sort of deteriorated.
Let's now turn to human resource management, my favorite subject. Now, when it comes to defense forces, you very rightly said in the beginning that it's the soldier on the ground that matters the most, and you also noted that the ethos of defense forces have remained the same. That's one common feature. But now, if you look around the world, particularly in the West, the attraction and retention of personnel in the defense forces have been a really big problem. Um, People really do not see working in the army or defense forces as a coveted career anymore. So attracting is a problem, and retention is another problem. So we've also read that in India, as far as NDA is concerned, there has been problem in terms of recruiting officers for the National Defense Academy. So, how do you see that generational change in terms of seeing defense forces as a career?
So one, when I come from a military family. So my father was also in the army, so for us there was not much option. We had seen it, and so we were quite happy to follow in our parents' footsteps. But I remember at that time, the conversation used to be, look, either you become an engineer, or you become a doctor, or you join the government service. These were the three broad options given to people when they would graduate out of school and college. Today, many, many more options in terms of job opportunities are available to people, and a lot of them are opting for it. So, what you said is right. There is a bit of an issue with regard to attracting the right kind of uh, talent into the military. So various steps are being done, and I think we've opened it up now also to women, which to some extent is going to overcome this problem. So while the problem of attracting talent remains, I think retention is not an issue. You really don't see people who have joined the services. You don't see a very large number of them wanting to leave. It's a good life. It's an attractive life. Lots of positives about comradeship, brotherhood. Uh, even facilities are good. So in fact, we have a short service commission, but a lot of people who are in short service actually don't want to leave and say, give us permanent commission. We saw that even among the women officers, went to the Supreme Court that why are women officers being only taken for short service, and that we want permanent retention in the military. So yes, as I said, attracting talent is a bit of a challenge, but retention is not. There are not too many people who want to leave once they've seen the military life.
When we talk about recruitment, that's quite different. The lower level as compared to the higher level. Now, at the lower end of the defense forces in India, historically, there has always been intense competition to join the defense forces, whether you call it economic compulsion or nationalism, whatever it is. But with the introduction of the Agniveer scheme, do you think that dynamics is likely to change? And how do you see Agniveer fulfilling the defense manpower needs going forward?
So, Agniveer, as you know, the scheme has its backers and its critics in India. There are two views towards the other. I don't want to get involved in that debate, but just in terms of what you're saying. So there would be thousands and thousands of people who would turn up for rallies, and they saw the military as a very sort of respectable job, respectable not only in that they were joining and putting on the uniform, but also the kind of respect that they would get when they go back to their villages, etc. People who were retiring and going back and settling in their villages were also treated with great respect. So that was the sort of sense. Now with the Agniveers coming in, only I think first 2 or 3 batches have got commissioned. But I was reading some reports that indicate that now the same people who would sort of opt for a military career are now preferring to go into the police or the Central Armed Police Forces because they see that as being more stable than a 4-year career in the army, after which 75% of them would leave. So I think we are going to see the impact of the Agniveer in the coming years, both outside and within the military. There are questions of whether standards are adequate because training periods have reduced, whether soldiers coming only for 4 years will retain the same ethos and values that regular army soldiers have. I think in the next 3 or 4 years is where we will see the impact. I think the good thing is that although the scheme has been promulgated, the government has said that it is open to reviewing it. And it's my own feeling, Mohan, as we go forward, the scheme as it sort of sounds 75-25, I think we'll see a lot of review in the coming years based on the lessons that we learn.
Now, in HR, after we address the attraction and the retention of talent issue, the next challenge we face in HR is competency development and leadership development. Now, in the corporate circles, in the knowledge economy, the focus is today on innovation, critical thinking, out of the box thinking, challenging the status quo, and so on. These are the values that are cherished. But when it comes to defense forces, we can't really encourage that too much, can we? Because stability, order, loyalty are as important as innovation, risk taking, questioning the authority, and so
on. So I agree with you, Mohan. So I think each organization, based on what its role is and what its priorities are, needs to have its own set of values. So, what are the values that the army has, and what when I'm saying the army, I mean the military. So we talk of values like honor, courage, loyalty, integrity, comradeship. And why are these important to us? And let me quote from Uh, Let me quote from a book. Uh, okay, The Profession of Arms uh, by General Hackett. Sorry, the name was roaming around in my mind. Yeah, so The Profession of Arms by General Hackett. And he says, the military deliberately fosters and promotes these values like courage, honor, loyalty, comradeship, not because they are morally desirable in themselves, but because they are essential for functioning. So it's not that these qualities are nice to have and so, let's promote them. But without them, the military will stop functioning. If you don't have instant obedience, if you don't have loyalty, you don't have courage, the army cannot function. And so I think this is how organizations must look at their set of values. Not something, to be put on your website or printed in a calendar. But what importance do you give them in your day-to-day functioning? And that I think is critical to how organizations develop. So there is a great emphasis on following these values, not because they look good, but that people could die unless they are following these values to the fullest.
Okay. The final challenge in HR is about training. Now, with the world being highly globalized and the wars always by nature being international, there is quite a lot of significance, at least in the corporate world, to training programs. And in the military too, we now see India broadening and deepening its relationship with Western allies and elsewhere, and having Malabar exercises and talisman exercises with Australia, Japan, US, all other Western allies. Now, when it comes to these international military exercises and the exchange programs, how culture specific are they? Because at the end of the day, national culture also plays an important role, doesn't it?
It does. It does. Obviously, I mean, what and how you operate is obviously based on your national culture. That influences, the way you work, the way you do things to a very large extent. Uh, but it doesn't really matter. In fact, I would say it's a positive because then you learn from each other. I mean, the idea of joint training is twofold. One, of course, is where situations could arise, then the two militaries can interoperate with each other. You know the other's drills and you know their practices. You've trained with them. You know how they do work. So in a situation, there is interoperability where both militaries need to work together. But I think also critical is the fact that you are learning from each other's practices. You're learning from how you do things and how we do things. And so picking up best practices from each other is also a big part of the learning process. And if you see in a lot of the joint exercises, you will find not only military training, but also cultural programs, so that you also learn about each other's culture and what you do. And then it would be strange to see, maybe Australians or the US troops doing Bhangra, but, that's what happens in the evening when you sort of unwind.
Okay. And then finally, with so many geopolitical tensions all around us, how safe and secure Indians should feel from a security perspective?
I think we should feel safe and secure, at least from external threats. I think the Indian military, India's diplomacy has done enough to secure India from what are traditional rivals, China and Pakistan are, and Indians should feel safe about it. Where I worry, Mohan, is our own sort of internal divisions, the social media, fake news, divisive narratives, and some of that I think is something that should concern us and say, look, we are a very plural kind of society, and we should find ways, best ways to live in harmony sort of with each other. Social media is really creating a lot of issues, and now you have deep fakes, and the way technology is resonating. So I think that's something that it's new, but that's something I think we need to and we have to come to grips with.
I think that you concluded it very well. That in democracy, constructive criticism is always welcome and preferable. But when you start undercutting your own people, your own government, your own forces, that's where the rotting starts, isn't it? Thank you very much, General Hooda. I have no words to thank you. Just your very presence is a kind of sense of achievement for people like us to see the heroes of the surgical strike, coming in real life in front of us. So, thank you, sir, for your service to the country and your participation in this documentary.
Thank you very much, and honored by your generous words about me. I wish you all the best.